Hello, my name is Salwan from Full Self Piano, and I'm going to take you through the first part of this series called Essential Music Theory and Piano Technique. This is really for anyone who's beginning their process in learning the piano. Okay, so in this session, the contents will include learning the different components of a piano musical score, learning the names of the notes on the treble and bass clef, learning the time values of 4 different types of notes and their equivalent rests, and learning how to count the beats in the bar. So, here we have a score of music of the very well-known song Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And I wanted to start with this to show you the type of thing you might see if you're starting off to play the piano. So in the next slide, we're going to break through the different, or break down the different aspects of this score to give you an awareness of things to look out for and their names. Okay, so on the top we see is the title, and underneath that is the subtitle. I've just called the subtitle Learning Piano and Music Theory, but normally that's quite important because if a piece of music has been taken from a set of different songs or pieces, it might give the information on the set in the subtitle. Or if a piece has been written for somebody, there could be a dedication on that line. Coming down from that on the right hand side, we see traditional and then arranged by Salwan Cartwright-Shamoon, which is myself. So the composer here is traditional because it's a traditional song, but normally that's where the composer of the piece is, and then underneath, if it's been arranged, that's where the arranger goes. Coming over to the left hand side, the highest item is a little note and the number 120, and that is called the tempo marking, and I've put in brackets beat per minute. Now the little note, as we'll come to see later, it's coloured in and has a line above it, and that's a crotchet note, and the 120 tells us how many of that type of note there is per minute. That's what BPM stands for after the tempo marking, beats per minute. So from that indication, we know that there is 120 crotchet beats per minute, or 2 crotchet beats a second. We have on the far left hand side a brace, and that's like a squiggly bracket, and that indicates that the 2 lines are for one instrument and are to be played simultaneously. So that differs from, let's say, a singer line, because a singer can only produce 1 note at a time. Because we have 2 hands with a piano, there can be more than 1 note played at a time, and there's 2 different staves, as you like, and they're to be played at the same time, and that's indicated by the brace. Then we have coming in the treble clef and the bass clef underneath it. They indicate the different types of notes. The treble clef is used when we're higher up on the piano, and the bass clef when we're lower. And we'll go into that in more detail later in the slide. For now, it's fine to know that one is the treble clef, the one that looks like a 6 with a line down it, and the bass clef looks like a 9 with 2 dots. We then have the time signature 4/4. We will go into what that means at a later stage, but for now, just knowing that the time signature is found after the clef is important. 4/4 means 4 crotchet beats in a bar. Following that, you see we have a ledger line, and the note that refers to is C. We'll also come on to that later on in the presentation, but for now, just to know that C is not on one of the 5 lines which make up the musical stave. So when we write that in the treble clef, we put a line underneath the stave, and that is called a ledger line. The stave is the 5 lines which we see on both the treble clef and the bass clef. Okay, next I want to look at the bar lines. So you might see that after 4 notes in the treble and bass clef we have a line, and then after the 3 notes we get another line, and basically because we know there's 4 beats in the bar from the time signature, those bar lines indicate when we have reached those 4 beats, and then a new 4 beat starts. You'll see that there's different types of notes, crotchets and also minims, but the important thing to know is that each time you see a bar line, that has meant there's 4 beats that have already happened. So there are different types of bar line, and if we go right to the end of the piece, you can see that there is what we call a double bar line, or the end bar line, where there's 2 lines. The one on the right is very heavy and thick, and then there's a normal bar line on the left. That indicates that we're at the end of the piece. But 4 bars before that, you'll see there is also that thick and thin line, but there's 2 dots in the middle spaces of the stave on both the upper stave on the treble clef and the bass clef. When we see those 2 dots, it means that is a section that needs repeated. And where we go back to is where we see the matching repeat lines, but going the other way. And you'll see that on the final bar of the first line. So this is a well-known song, and I can demonstrate. La, if we go from the start, la 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 la, then we start the repeated section. La 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 la. We go back to the bar before, because that's where the repeat sign is. La 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 la, and then we carry on. La 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 la. So in that version, I watched the repeat, went back to the start of the repeat section following those double bar lines with the dots, and when I'd repeated it, I moved on to finish the piece. Okay, let's move on to looking at the names of the notes on treble and bass clef. So, like we've seen in the piece before, the C major scale, which is the most basic because there's no black notes in it, in its natural form, we'll see that quite like the English alphabet where we have A, B, and then C, D, E, F, G, A, B, it follows that pattern apart from the fact we don't start on A, we start on C. And once we get to C, we repeat. So from C to C, we call that an octave, and that is made up of 8 notes. And you see C starts one line below the stave, and then we've got D, which is up, and then the notes are shown incrementally either on a line or on the space. They go alternatively to line and space. So you see we've got C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And then following that, there would be D, E, F, and it would repeat again the octave higher. So the first C below, with the ledger line below the stave, that's what we call middle C, and that's at the middle point in the piano. The reason why I've circled in red B on the C major scale in the treble clef is because you'll notice that that is when the stem is going down, and that is on the third line of the stave. So notes on the third line of the stave or above go down, and notes that are below that, you'll see the stem goes up. The stem is the little line, so the note is the circular oval shape and the stem is the line. And you'll see when it's going up, it's on the right hand side, and then when it's going down, it's on the left hand side. Now, there is a couple of rhymes that help us remember, especially if we're starting off, what the names of the notes are in the treble and bass clef. In the treble clef, the names of the notes on the lines are E, G, B, D, F, and that stands for every good boy deserves football or fudge, or it's a rhyme that you can use to remember that. And then the notes on the spaces, they actually just spell the word face. When we move to the left hand, middle C is actually one line above the stave, not below like the treble clef. That's the final note. You can see C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. That's middle C is the final note. So you see on the bass clef, it is at the top of the stave, one ledger line above, and in the treble clef, it's one line below. So that indicates, in a sense, what the value of using these different clefs are. Because if there was a melody, let's say, that mainly featured in the octave below middle C, we would use the bass clef because it's much easier to read those notes when they're on the lines and spaces. Whereas if we had a melody that was mostly above middle C, we would use the treble clef because, again, it's much easier to read. So using the bass clef, we have G, B, D, F, A for the lines, for the notes on the lines. And a similar football rhyme for that is good boys deserve football always. You could use fudge if you weren't into football. And A, C, E, G are the names of the notes that are in the spaces on the bass clef. And a simple rhyme for that is all cows eat grass. Okay, now we're going to the names of 4 different types of notes and their equivalent rests. So quaver, you'll see we didn't have that in the Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, but it is smaller than a crotchet in that it's worth half a beat. So we'll see that a quaver can be identified by having the note head colored in, the stem, and then like a little, I don't know how you describe it, a little thing that comes down in that shape. It's like it's almost like half of an O, but not quite, thicker at the top. So that, like a tail, I think would be a good word for it. A quaver has a tail that comes off the stem, and it's worth half a beat. A crotchet is simply worth 1 beat, and it's all coloured in and has the stem. A minim is similar to a crotchet, only the note head itself is not coloured in. And it's worth double of a crotchet, 2 beats. And then we have a semibreve note, which has no stem, and it's worth 4 beats. So whilst notes indicate something that needs to be played with your fingers, they also have their equivalent rests, and that's where there is an indication for silence. So it doesn't, although in Twinkle Twinkle Little Star there was no rests, you'll see in music that there can be rests and that they can be used really effectively, and they have equivalent values to the different notes. So we have a quaver note, but we also have a quaver rest, and that looks quite similar to a 7 with a dot on the left hand side, and that's worth half a beat. The crotchet rest is takes a little bit of a while to get used to. It's like two squiggly arrows joined together, and it's worth 1 beat. Now both the minim rest and the semibreve rest, you'll see that they have a line, the minim below and the semibreve on top, and that line is synonymous with the line you would see on a stave. It's normally coming on the third line. So the minim rest is like this rectangular box, and that sits on top of the third line, and that equals 2 beats. The semibreve rest sits on top of the fourth line, so it's the minim in that space is on top of the third line, and the semibreve is underneath or falls below the fourth line. So it's worth 4 beats. However, that rest is also used to indicate a full bar or whole bar rest. So if you had a piece of music that had 2 beats in a bar, or for example 3 beats in a bar, or a different quality, we can use that rest to just indicate that the whole bar is a rest equivalent to whatever time signature there is. Now, I just wanted to finish by looking at these different types of notes and their values in context. So in this example, we have 4 different types of note: the quaver, crotchet, minim, semibreve. There's 4 beats in the bar, and we're looking at the different ways that they would be counted. Now, the quaver, you see when there's multiple quavers, the little tail is joined together at the top, so there's like an umbrella on top of the notes. That indicates that they're quavers. The crotchets are as they are, and the minims and the semibreve also. Now, with 4 beats in the bar, because quavers are worth half beats, we have 8 of them, and they're divided in half or beamed in half, where we've got 4 joined together and 4 joined together. That's to show the equal splitting of the bar in 4/4 time. The crotchets, which come after that, are just equally have their place. The minims split the 4 beats of the bar into 2, and then there's only 1 semibreve. Now, when we're counting the beats in the bar where they fall, I'm going to start with the crotchet, and it's just very simply 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I clap that, 1, 2, 3, 4. The minim, if I clap that bar, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 2 beats, or there's 2 notes, and they're held for 2 beats each. And the semibreve is 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So with 4 beats in a bar, there's only one of those notes because they're held for 4 beats in total. Now, when we get to the quaver at the start, there is only 4 beats in the bar, but we have 8 quavers. So what we can do is add another method of counting, or another thing to count, so that we have 8 things in total to count. And that is and. We add the word and. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and when you're clapping, what you can use as a good guide, if it was crotchets and there was just 4 beats in the bar, you'll see there's 2 movements that your hand make. They go in to clap and then come out. So 1, this is for crotchets. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now for quavers, we have to have twice as many quavers in those 4 beats, because there's 8 quavers, 8 half beats in the time of 4 whole beats. So what we can think, when the hands come together is 1, and when they go out is and. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So that allows us to equate equally the 8 quaver beats in the time of 4. Let me intersect those. So I'll do 4 crotchet beats, then 8 quaver beats, and show you how they both happen within the same space of time. So here's the crotchets. 1, 2, 3, 4 quavers. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So the hand movement is exactly the same for both, but when I'm counting crotchets, I'm including both the coming together and going out as one beat. When I'm counting quavers, 1 and 2, I'm distinctly counting the 2 different movements, the hand coming together and then going out. And that's a really good way to get stability in the pulse and the beat, and to keep it consistent over the music. So I hope that's helpful, and there is more to discuss and explore, but I think as a primary start, there's some helpful things there to help you on your way, and I look forward to seeing you for part 2. Thank you.